meeting is ready to be called to order. I'm Chris.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the recording started. Yes, it started now.
Thank you, Ms. Pajak. Nope, I appreciate that. We're going to call the meeting to order and take roll call. I am here in person
I think Ms. Guthrie usually calls it to order and notes the time and reads the spiel too.
Yes.
Okay.
We will do that. I mean, Ms. Guthrie, I was just going to say that Ms. Guthrie is present here at the Hobby Building in Austin with me. And we're going to do the call to order now, and I will give it to Ms. Guthrie to go ahead and do that. You can read the part in italics. And state the time, please.
Now 9:01. This meeting will.
Hope you're still on mute. Sorry. Oh, right here.
Okay, this meeting will be open to the public above, and will proceed by video conference as allowed by Texas Government Code 155.127. The location shall have two-way audio video communication with each of the other's locations during the meeting. The president or presiding officer of the board will be physically present at the location and the room listed above.
And the time is 9:02 a.m.
Okay. Yeah.
And I will go ahead and help with the roll call. Ms. Guthrie.
Present.
Okay, and then just a reminder for board members, when you are speaking, please have your camera on and check to make sure that you're not on mute. And we'll proceed. Mr. Weidler.
Present.
Ms. Davidson.
Present.
Ms. Carlson. Ms. Garcia.
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Present.
Mr. Graham. Dr. Hebert.
Present.
And Dr. Jimenez.
Present.
Okay. We do have a quorum, and Ms. Guthrie, we can proceed. Okay. The first item on the agenda today is the board member report. This would be an opportunity for any board member that would have anything they would like to report to the board regarding today's agenda. Are there any board members that would like to address their fellow board members?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, that would bring us to the executive director report. Again, Mr. Carlton is unable to attend today, so I will cover this agenda item. I don't know if our CFO is present today. Joey, are you?
I'm here, Chris.
Okay, you want to give a short budget update for us?
Yeah, I can do that real quick. Good morning, board members. Thank you, Chris. So just a quick update on our budget for through the end of April 2022. Our agency is currently executing 85% of our budget. So we're kind of holding steady where we have been the past couple of months at the 85% mark. I've been working with our executive team to consider end of year one-time projects to cover that 15% spread. And I've also requested from the department managers their LAR wish list and kind of one-time projects that they might have or are considering, so we can see if we can use some of that 15% to cover that as well. So we'll get to 100% by the end of August. And then I've also included on our budget report on the last page our total revenue collection that we've done through the end of April. And year to date, the agency has collected about $24.5 million in medical fees, professional fees, and things related to that nature. So pending any questions from the board members, I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions about the budget? Okay. There is another item in your Laserfish folder. That would be the enforcement report for the second quarter of fiscal year 2022. This covers all of the boards that board staff serves. It does also have your specific information as an acupuncture board. The main thing to look for there is, any change in trends over the years. Having reviewed it, there's nothing that would be of concern to staff. We're continuing to function and hold our ISCs and deal with COVID and all of those things. Are there any questions about the enforcement report from any of the board members? Okay. The other items that Mr. Carlton has on his update, there is an internal audit update that we did complete an audit of that our outside auditors completed an audit for the physician health program. They identified nothing major, a couple of areas to take a look at, and that's kind of being followed up on by the physician health program. They do, of course, continue to serve acupuncture licensees as well. And nothing specific to your board related to that audit, but that was completed. There's also a COVID update on Mr. Carlton's report. The board staff continue to work mostly remote. We continue to do ISCs remote, but we do have staff who are in the building handling the mail and answering calls for consumers and licensees. And the model is working well. Our performance measures are being met. And so no issues with that. And then finally, the last item on this report is an update on our new building. The building is still being built. It's close to completion. The first agencies are supposed to start moving in June. We haven't gotten to tour it yet. Our move date isn't until at least August. It might end up being a little bit later than that. So we haven't gotten to take a tour of it yet. When we do, we will have space for us to continue to do board meetings like this, where it can kind of be a hybrid with a board member present, open to the public, and a lot of people participating remotely. It'll have all the tech that we need to do that. We're going to be on the 9th floor there. There will be a room there that will accommodate these meetings for the presiding officer. So again, we expect to move somewhere toward the end of this year, as early as August. It could end up being a little bit later than that. Anybody have any other questions regarding agenda item 3? Okay. The next item is the medical director report. That would be Dr. Brett. Dr. Brett, do you have anything for this meeting?
Just really quickly. We're doing very well for acupuncture experts, but I would put out a call to anyone if they have recommendations for physician experts, particularly experts who have knowledge and are practicing in the areas of complementary and alternative medicine and integrative medicine. We could use a few in that area, as well as any physician who you think would do a good job actively practicing for the board. But that's an area where you all might have a little more insight and access to those physicians. So if you do have some names, please send them to me. I'll reach out to them and copy you on the email. And I do appreciate any leads that you can give me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brett. All right, next agenda item number 5 is consideration and possible action regarding pending litigation with Mr. Freshour.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm going to have a quick report today. There's nothing pending that is really unusual. We've got a few substantial evidence reviews with the medical board. You all don't have anything pending. We've got a couple of federal cases that are pending but not really moving. And we continue to wait on a decision from the Texas Supreme Court on an issue related to the reporting to a national practitioner data bank of a physician, again, unrelated to the acupuncture board. And that's really it. The Texas Supreme Court heard this matter 6 or 8 months ago on the National Practitioner Data Bank reporting, and we're just waiting on the decision. When we get that, you will get a report from me. But other than that, unless you have questions, that would be my report today, Mr. Palazzolo.
Thank you, Mr. Freshour. Any questions? Okay. Agenda item 6 relates to the physician health program. They do not have any cases to report to you today. We can check that one completed. And that brings us to discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding requests to become approved providers, and that would be for Ms. Unterborn.
Yes, there is one request to become an approved provider from AccuSharpener. This info is in your folder for review, and I do need a motion for approval, please.
I'll motion that
Can
we
motion-
approve them. This is Dr. Jimenez. I'll motion that we approve them.
Okay, this is Dr. Hebert. I can second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion carries. Completes agenda item number 7. Agenda item 8 is report from staff on the renewal of approved providers. That's also Ms. Unterborn.
Yes, we have 3 renewals of approved provider status that meet all the licensure requirements and have been approved by staff. This is a report that's in your folder for review, and I don't need a motion for this.
Okay. Agenda item 9, report from staff continuing acupuncture education courses approved. Again, Ms. Unterborn.
We have 7 courses from 1 provider that meet all the requirements and have been approved by staff. The report again is in your folder for review, and there's no motion needed for this one.
Okay. Agenda item 10, discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding request for approval of continuing education. I'm sorry, is that the one we just did?
No, you're on the right one. They just sound very similar.
All right, for approval of continuing acupuncture education courses.
And there are none for agenda item number 10.
Okay. The next agenda item is agenda item 11, discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding applicants appearing concerning eligibility. Ms. Unterborn.
Yes, we have 1 acupuncture licensure applicant that is appearing today, applicant number 2512. They are appealing to appeal the executive director's determination. This applicant has not actively practiced full-time as an acupuncturist since August of 2019. They did submit a statement regarding their acupuncture work history. They stated that due to a change in financial circumstances, the need to have a steady income, health insurance, and retirement account, they chose to seek a job in the airline industry. They closed their office in August 2019 and continued to see patients part-time in their home. Once the COVID restrictions were enacted in 2020, it wasn't possible to see patients because of the travel schedule and the local mandates and the requirement to isolate 2 weeks after travel. She indicates that she keeps current with CEUs as well as self-study. She reads Acupuncture Today and has found several YouTube channels doing pulse and tongue readings on her fellow flight attendants. She also stated that she's interested in establishing a part-time practice, helping them and other people who are suffering in her community. She's interested in setting up a nonprofit clinic to help veterans, very similar to the clinic that she helped run in Albuquerque for 8 years. She did provide 317.75 CEUs from the time period of 1999 to present. So because the applicant had not actively practiced full-time since August 2019, board staff recommended that she would need to complete a 6-month supervised temporary license. This recommendation was reviewed and approved by the acupuncture chairperson in September of 2021. She is appealing this determination, stating that while she has not been practicing full-time for the past 2 years, she has over 20 years experience as a licensed practicing acupuncturist in New Mexico. She has extensive training and experience in cosmetic acupuncture and well over 100 hours as a volunteer with Acupuncturists Without Borders in their military stress relief program. She's also been a guest speaker and teacher at Southwest Acupuncture College in Santa Fe, and she's been continuing to practice acupuncture on a limited basis, both working on family members here in Texas and during her frequent visits to New Mexico. She indicates that the internship, the supervised temporary license, places an undue burden because she's currently working full-time in another industry. She's not entirely against an internship per se, but after 20 years of practice, the requirement of over 400 hours of supervised practice is simply not necessary. She has found an acupuncturist who would be willing to work with her 10 hours a week for 3 months. So if there are no questions, then you can proceed with asking applicant 2512.
Okay, and is the applicant with us online?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Unless there are questions from the board members, I think this would be an appropriate time for the applicant to make a statement, and then you would still have an opportunity to ask follow-up questions after her statement.
Well, I do not have a statement prepared. Everything that Ms. Unterborn said was pretty much everything I have to say, my words exactly. I have never harmed a patient. I have an established practice or held an established practice for almost 20 years. And I continue to keep updated. I continue to practice on a very limited basis. And I would like to practice here in Texas. Got many of my coworkers who suffer from neck and shoulder pain. It's very frustrating for me to not be able to help them in an appropriate manner. I don't have anybody to refer them to locally. So again, very frustrating.
So how many hours a week have you been treating your coworkers?
I don't treat my coworkers in Texas because I'm not licensed to do so. I practice in New Mexico, and that would probably sadly be more like 5 hours a month because I'm not there all the time.
So I think the minimum hours to maintain a license in Texas is 20 hours a week for 40 weeks.
That would be the licensure requirement to get an initial license in Texas. When an acupuncture applicant applies, staff verifies that they meet the active practice licensing requirement, which is looking at the last 2 years from the date of the application. If in one of those last 2 years preceding the date of the application, that they have practiced for a minimum of 20 hours per week for a minimum of 40 weeks in that year.
And I understand that requirement. However, I was unable to do so because of COVID restrictions. New Mexico was extremely locked down. They would, and the practice parameters were just beyond what I could do unless I were going to dedicate myself full time to it. And in fact, many of my colleagues in New Mexico were unable to practice full time because of those restrictive lockdowns. So I'm kind of in a very frustrating position where I couldn't have done it anyway.
Would it be helpful if Ms. Unterborn gave the panel some of the options they might have at this point in terms of if they were ready to consider making a recommendation?
Sure, I can do that. So
Okay.
because this is an appeal, the board would need to either grant the appeal or deny the appeal. If you grant the appeal, then you can approve her to be issued with a full unrestricted acupuncture license. If you deny the appeal, then the original determination of the 6-month supervised temporary license could still stand. And she would have to comply with that in order to be licensed. If you granted the appeal, you could, like I said previously, approve her for a full unrestricted license or give her some sort of agreed order with some sort of parameters for her to comply with. But that's really kind of the options for this particular scenario.
If anybody on the board feels that they need legal advice of counsel, you can make a motion to go into executive session to get legal advice from your general counsel's office. If somebody's ready to go ahead and make a motion for discussion, somebody can go ahead and make a motion at this time as well.
You will need to, you're going to have to decide on this, and this is Scott Fresh Hour. You can, as Ms. Unterborn said, you can deny the appeal, you can grant the appeal. If you're considering granting it and looking at perhaps some form of an alternative that might be workable in your opinion, this is probably where it's appropriate, as Mr. Palazzolo says, and Ms. Guthrie, to go into executive session. We can walk you through your options as far as potential resolutions you have. I mean, theoretically, you could grant the appeal and issue the license. The concern would be that you would need to articulate the basis upon which you did it, because you have historically looked at, the 20 hours for 40 weeks on people that haven't been practicing. But this may be a unique circumstance you would like to discuss further. And if that's the case, I think executive session would be the most appropriate.
Yes, I'd like to go into executive session.
Okay, you can read. Okay. I take it the basis for that is to get the advice of counsel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion as second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Palazzolo, who seconded for purposes of the record?
This is Mr. Weidler. I seconded that.
Okay, Mr. Wider, thank you. You didn't flash up, I think, simultaneously with your second, so we didn't quite have you there, but that'll be perfect. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Palazzolo.
No problem. I heard the ayes. Was there anybody opposed? No one opposed. Okay. The Texas State Board of Acupuncture Examiners is now closing this meeting to the public to continue an executive session for the private consultation and advice of counsel concerning pending or contemplated litigation, settlement offers, and/or legal matters subject to the attorney-client privilege under the authority of the Open Meetings Act 551.071 of the Government Code. Deliberations concerning, While at executive session, the board will not take any action, make any decision, or vote with regard to any matter that may be considered or discussed. A certified agenda of any executive session will be made. And I believe it'll take a couple of minutes for staff to get us moved over to the executive session, to the applicant and any members of the public. You will be removed from the meeting. Or actually, you won't be removed from the meeting. We're going to be moved over to an executive session, into a breakout room, and then we will be rejoining when we come out of executive session.
So you don't need to do anything, board members. You will be automatically popped into the other room. So just wait one moment.
I believe everybody's back.
Okay. Somebody check to make sure we've got a quorum, got everybody
I'm
here.
checking.
Thanks, Wendy.
And Mr. Palazzolo, once Ms. Pajak will get the recording started, you do need to read or Ms. Guthrie, somebody needs to read the coming out of executive session, including the time regarding no decisions and that type of thing. And then you can move to taking up this particular issue on the applicant who's appealing. And I see the applicant is here. So I think we're
only
ready
see
to go.
6. I only see 6. Did we leave somebody off? Sorry, there, it keeps repopulating, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna go
Oh,
back.
okay, I'm sorry.
And count.
And
Okay.
is this where we say if you're not here, let us know now?
Right, well, you can bring them out of executive, they just can't move or take motion. So if you want to, Ms. Guthrie, if you and Mr. Palazzolo want to bring us out of executive, you can do that now. We just may have to ensure with Ms. Pajak that we've got the quorum for purposes of continuing the business and addressing this applicant's issue.
Okay, we do have a quorum, so the executive session has ended at 9:44 a.m. on May 6th, 2022. There was no final action, decision, or vote with regard to any matter considered or discussed in executive session. The certified agenda of the executive session was made. You can return to agenda item 11 regarding the applicant appearing. And if anybody would like to make a motion, that would be fine.
Hold on, I want to be sure. Let's double check. We have Mr. Palazzolo, will you go down, or Ms. Pajak go roll? Because I want to be sure we've got a quorum.
Sure, we can do a roll call coming out of executive session. Ms. Guthrie.
Here.
Mr. Weidler.
Here, present.
Okay. Ms. Davidson.
Here. Present.
Ms. Carlson. Ms. Garcia.
Here.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Present.
Mr. Graham. Dr. Hebert.
Here.
Okay.
And Dr. Jimenez.
Here.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Scott,
You can proceed.
Scott,
Yes.
This is Dr. Menace. I just wanted to say that when we went into the executive session, I was muted. I couldn't get through. I didn't have any video or any audio or anything. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I don't want to, of course, say anything about the executive session other than I did hear what was going on and I agree with it.
Okay, well, and again, that's fine because there is no vote taken. So
Correct.
as long as you can be heard and seen here, we're good to go. So thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Jimenez.
Just for the benefit of the other board members, I wanted them to know.
Good, good. Okay, we can proceed.
And there may be more discussion at this time too, once there's been a motion entertained.
Okay.
Does anybody have a motion?
Yeah, this is Mr. Weidler. I would like to forward a motion on agenda item 11. Ms. Rogers, if you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I would like to forward a motion granting the appeal pending your agreement that you said you had another acupuncturist who would supervise you for 10 hours a week for 3 months for a total of 120 hours. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. McCollum, Clint McCollum in Galveston, Texas.
Okay. So the motion would grant the appeal based on that item in your statement. And I'll look for a second or open it to discussion if anybody has any alternate ideas.
If there's no further discussion, I would go ahead and second the motion. Dr. Menace.
Who?
We have
I can't. Somebody made a second first. He made the first.
Ms. Gonzalez and Dr. Jimenez are both seconding. And so, Mr. Weidler, to be clear, you want to grant the appeal. You want to grant the applicant what we call it now, understand please, applicant, we will call this a temporary supervised license, but it will be for the parameters set out by Mr. Weidler, which is the 10 hours a week for 3 months with that individual. What happens then, and again, Ms. Underborn, you can explain, and your staff may do this offline with the applicant, but at the end of the time frame, the acupuncturist you are working with will just send in a report saying, you know, you did wonderfully, okay, and will automatically issue you your full license kind of thing, which is obviously the hope, but that's how it will work. So it will still appear as a temporary restricted, but it will be under the parameters that were proposed by the individual. Am I correct on that, Ms. Uttermore?
Correct. So she will be notified by her licensure analyst. She'll receive a letter and the appropriate work logs that she will have to comply with the supervised temporary license for a minimum of 10 hours a week for a minimum of 3 months. Once the supervising acupuncturist submits the appropriate paperwork back to the analyst, and we make sure that that acupuncturist is fully licensed, no restrictions, that they are okay to act as a supervisor. Her analyst will issue the supervised temporary license. She will comply with that for the entire time. As it gets close to the end of completion, the acupuncturist that's supervising her will be required to submit the work logs confirming that she did do the minimum of 10 hours a week for the minimum of 3 months, and then also a Form L evaluation, essentially evaluating her performance during that entire time. If all that comes back clean and in compliance, then her licensure application will be considered complete, and we can put her on the next list to be licensed.
Okay, so again, we have to take a vote, but we want you to understand the parameters and make sure our board members fully understand kind of the mechanics that go into the appeal. So everybody fully understands what the motion does or doesn't do. Okay, that's why we're being so explanatory on the front end. So Mr. Weidler, you do have a motion and a second. I think Mr. Palazzolo or Ms. Guthrie, I don't know if you've called for discussion. If there is any, you can have it. If there is none, you can take the vote.
We have not yet. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes, and I think Ms. Utterborn might have another instruction for you, applicant.
Yes. Applicant 2512, you'll receive an email right now from board staff with a separate Teams link. You can click on that Teams link where I have some licensure staff that will be available to answer any questions that you have about the motion that you just heard and give you any further instruction at that time. So you would be leaving this meeting to access that separate Teams meeting if you had any questions that they could help answer.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
All right. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 12, discussion, recommendation, possible action regarding applicants for a Texas acupuncture license. Ms. Underborn.
Yes, we have a total of 12 acupuncture licensure applicants that have met all the requirements and been determined to be eligible by board staff. I do need a motion for approval, please.
I'll motion that we approve the 12 applicants as Dr. Menace.
I'll second it. Donna Guthrie.
Ms. Guthrie seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. That item passes. That brings us to agenda item 13. And there are not going to be any for the rest of these items, I think, so for a while. So agenda items 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27, there are none. For agenda item 28, that brings us to an open forum for public comment. We usually pause for a little bit of time to see if anybody from the public is wanting to address the board. pause for just a couple of minutes, make sure nobody's on mute and having trouble. Okay, hearing none. Agenda item number 29 would be consideration and approval of the January 28th, 2022 board meeting minutes. Those are in the Laserfish file. I believe that does Mr. Freshour, Ms. Pajak, they do need to vote. We do need someone to make a motion
Yes.
to approve the minutes and then a second and a vote.
This is Mr. Wilder. I'll forward a motion to approve the January 28th board meeting minutes.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, and then Ms. Guthrie is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. That brings us to agenda item 30. This is related to board meeting dates. And staff wanted to bring this up with you. Traditionally, you have had 3 board meeting dates set in advance, a year in advance. What staff has been looking at the kind of agenda items, we're trying to be respectful of your time commitment and also efficient with the use of staff time. And we do have a proposal that we would like you to consider as a board. I don't think we need a vote on this. It would just be direction to staff. But the recommendation would be to set one meeting a year toward the end of the fiscal year for the acupuncture board, and then based on, if like you just saw, there was a licensure applicant that had to appear, or if there was a matter that needed to be done, we could set a second meeting about 6 months after that first one as needed. And so instead of having them penciled in, we would schedule one meeting each year and then have a second one if we needed it. Obviously, in a situation where we had to add an additional meeting, you can't always set these meetings with notice. We would still need, unless it was an emergency, we would still need the presiding officer present here. The rest of you would just join by video as you are now. I do believe General Counsel has kind of looked at this. There may need to be a rule change related to how how licenses are granted. Some of the other boards are able to grant licenses between meetings. Traditionally with the acupuncture board, just as we just did a couple minutes ago, they've always been approved during the meeting. I don't know, Ms. Pajak, Mr. Freshour, is there any kind of information we give them about what rule changes would be needed?
We would be looking at it. We haven't really delved into it yet, but again, board members, what we are looking at is your workload, and then this is really actually very positive. You don't have any issues that really come up with your practice population. Very, very, very few historically. A few applicants occasionally. Once in a while, you have, some disciplinary action. So what we were thinking was, have one set a year, and then if we had a time where, say, a number of applicants came up, and that's really the most common one, would be applicants that were kind of like y'all just did. We would then know that was coming and give you a fairly early notice saying, hey, it looks like we've got 2 or 3 applicants building up. Can we get a meeting, within the next 30 or 45 days to set it up? Because we think that would be more efficient. So then we could gauge your workload to the unique situations, but at the same time, we could clarify what parameters staff had to keep your applicants moving through. So that's really what we're looking at. We're not sure how much changing of the rules need to be done and how much of it more is just really going to be process. As Mr. Palazzola said, the biggest thing might be that at your next meeting, if you were to consider this, we would come back with, these were the things you would need to go ahead and clearly delegate, say, to Mr. Carlton or to Miss Unterborn. And Miss Guthrie, you're very familiar with this. You get notice now on some issues that come up, in between meetings. We would just be very clear if there's anything else that might be delegated. And then what it really does is it would focus you only on issues and problems that came before the board, because, as I said, for all intent purposes, your practitioner population is really quite, for lack of a better term, quite easy for board staff to deal with and quite efficient because there's really not a lot of issues and it is a small population. So from that perspective, it makes more sense for us to be more frugal and focused with your time than 3 meetings a year where you have to prepare for it. And, you know, and you're done in 1 hour. And like today, you had 3 items out of 30 that really fully needed to be addressed. So we just think that makes more sense in your public service time. So what we need at this point is just direction, Ms. Guthrie, from you as the presiding officer saying, yeah, would you explore some possibilities if that's what you want us to do, set 1 a year, and then look at what we might need to delegate in between, and we can give you a little bit better idea of what the model would look like. But we first need that direction to do it. And again, it was really due consideration. And I know Ms. Underborn, for example, we talked with her yesterday. She's got some statistics on how little problems or how little work we really have to do on your side. As you said, this was the first applicant you've had appear in 3 years, but you've licensed a large number of applicants from 2019 to 2022 without ever having to see them. So again, you've got really a problem-free, for the most part, a very problem-free community of practitioners.
Yeah. And the other things you guys sometimes consider at meetings are approving acupuncture, continuing education, but you've delegated a lot of that to staff. New providers that don't have a history with us, I think, Grace, correct me if I'm wrong, would come before you guys, or if there's issues, you know, with a particular acupuncture continuing education proposal, then those would come before you. But like we said, the last applicant that you guys saw for a license was in 2019, and the acupuncture continuing education is something that's kind of been, you know, the process is pretty smooth. We do present those to you for approval, but that's not something that you would have to meet for, I think, by rule. But I will defer to Grace and Mr. Freshour.
I mean, looking at the continuing education component, which are 4 agenda items, and you heard the 4 at today's meeting. During the last 3 fiscal years, we had 3 that were approved provider status, and all 3 were approved. The motion was made to approve them. There was no issue. They had met the requirements to become an approved provider. And then for the approved courses, we had 1 in the last 3 fiscal years that required a motion. The other 2 agenda out of the 4 items are just reports, which board staff has looked at these, and per previous direction, board staff is able to approve these. And those don't require motions by the board members. And as Ms. Pajak was saying, we have only had a licensure applicant last May of 2019 until today's applicant in May of 2022.
Right. So, yeah. And so again, these are just things we have. So what we would like is direction. And like Ms. Underborn was saying, and one of the things Ms. Pajak and Mr. Shobasi and I would look at is on the reports, like Ms. Underborn was referring to, the reports on these people are automatically licensed. Nothing would prohibit us from quarterly sending a report to you as board members, just saying, dear board members, you know, Ms. Davidson, Ms. Gonzalez, Dr. Jimenez, you know, Mr. Weidler, et cetera. Here's the quarterly report, just so you know, this is how many people we've licensed without any problems. So we could still furnish the reports. We wouldn't necessarily have to do it in an agenda because you're not voting on it. And the purpose of an open meeting is for items that require you to vote on and take an action as the appointees that are outside the normal standard routine items. But we could always furnish reports at the interim, which is an element that Ms. Pajak and Mr. Shobasi, Ms. Underborn, Mr. Palazzolo, we would look at. And if we come back and you say, hey, we think this is a great idea, we could also talk to you about reports that we would be able to furnish you so you could see what was going on with board that was kind of the standard pursuant to your delegation and authority given to Mr. Carlton or staff. So it wouldn't be like you wouldn't hear from us at all for 6 months or a year. We can certainly keep y'all updated, via report, which again is not public business. So we're just thinking about efficiencies all the way around for everyone involved. It's the regulated community, but you as the appointees as well.
Yes, I'd like for you to investigate meeting once a year and then as needed if we need to meet for other issues.
Okay, we can do that. And we will also look at the reporting aspect of what we think we could report to you. And if you all as members at our next meeting have, could we do a report of, this or that, or you think there's a report we might need, we can certainly contemplate that. But we will bring you the reports out of the agendas now and any other reports we think that we can furnish you to keep you updated. So you do have, periodic information as the gubernatorial appointees. Okay, I think we can take that as direction, Mr. Shobasi and Ms. Pajak. Do you agree that that's all we needed for that? Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to have the next scheduled meeting and propose this at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, we're going to explore it further and bring some more information along with, and what will happen is
statistics and stuff like that.
But also meeting with Mr. Carlton and Mr. Pelazzo and Ms. Underborn to think about what reports might be needed to keep our board members informed and those kind of things. Yes, Ms. Pajak, that's exactly it.
Good. Well, with that brings us to agenda item 31. We would need a motion on adjournment.
I move.
To adjourn.
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Should I wait longer to see if anyone's opposed? All right, the motion carries, and this meeting of the Texas Acupuncture Board is adjourned. Thank you.
At
Thank you.
10:04.
10:04 a.m.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Freshour.
Thank you.
Thank you all, members.
Thank you, everybody.